Hi, this is Dizzy, as always. No fancy hair and no makeup today, because sometimes you need a break. Sometimes you just need to chill. I made a video yesterday about the fact that I was going to try therapy again, and I did. And the therapist was actually really good. The therapist has a child on the spectrum and immediately, like within 30 seconds, recognized that I was as well. Like, I didn't have to announce it. And I kind of want to talk about how that's important, because a lot of autism traits, especially when you're talking about trauma back from childhood all the way up, and how you were treated and how, people dealt with you and that type of thing. If your therapist doesn't understand what autism is or doesn't believe you're autistic, they will insert malicious intent into a lot of your behaviors. I know a lot of, women on the spectrum, especially, were misdiagnosed as borderline, or, that still is happening. Despite the fact that the intent is often quite different. Like, it might not be fear of abandonment. It might not be more intentional manipulation type thing. Although whether or not all borderline manipulation is intentional or not is up for debate, obviously. A lot of people don't realize they're being manipulative. A lot of our basic primal instincts and facial expressions are actually quite manipulative. But, okay, I'm getting off topic. Lottie! So, having a therapist that recognizes that maybe you've been misunderstood to the point that it has caused more trauma, that's really important. And that's not common. Maybe it is getting more common, and I didn't know it because I had to stay away from therapy for a while because I've been gaslit. I've been shown dudes dongles on Zoom therapy, and I've had a lot of therapists just say stuff like, try to tell you to do exposure therapy for things that simply will not, like, the autistic nervous system will not exposure therapy itself out of those feelings. The sensory issues aren't going to necessarily go away because you did the thing a bunch of times. For example, I can't drive on the interstate. And people like to say things. I really am not a fan. I love phrases and fun things like that. I'm a Southerner, of course. But platitudes, like, you're underestimating yourself. You don't give yourself enough credit. No, I don't belong driving on the interstate. If I have a panic attack and I have to take my anxiety meds to be a passenger, I am the passenger. Maybe I shouldn't be driving on the interstate. The speed and the sound and all that really gets me. Always has. I have lived all over the country. I have been driven on the interstate all over the country. That's plenty of exposure therapy. And I'm still not going to get on the interstate and drive myself. Okay? And there are some days where I won't even be the passenger. I can't. I'll be like, I can't do this activity today because of the interstate. I've had therapists say really bizarre things to me about that, like that, it's you shouldn't be, because you're a parent, you have to use the interstate. Like, that's very strange to me. There are ways to I can get to the hospital down the street real quick, but no interstate, When you have certain disabilities like that, you learn ways around it. People survived without the interstate for many, many years, many thousands of years. So, but having someone that understands, like, that's an issue you just have and it's going to remain that way, that's how you are, allows them to move on to issues that you actually want to talk about. Like for me, there's a lot of grief issues. Like, my mom died 5 days after I turned 16, and then my girlfriend got murdered, and then my nephew died from cystic fibrosis, and then the sister, and a lot, very young. This all happened in within my teen years and early 20s, lots and lots of death. And I don't live in in a time period where that's where I would be exposed to that, where that's more common. I know there are time periods where that was actually really common, but because we've sanitized death a lot, it'll leave you shooketh. 'Cause people often talk about death in this weird way, like almost like it can't happen to them, Whereas I'm the type of person where I have already started looking at my own urns. Like, I would rather have that prepared so the family doesn't have to think about it. Plus, what if they pick an ugly urn? I'm just kind of playing. But, having a therapist who understands that you're on the spectrum, if you're on the spectrum, is super important. It definitely changes the whole dynamic of the therapy session, because it becomes a lot less accusatory, and it allows the therapist to have a little bit more empathy for what's going on with you. Like, I've always said no one has the right to be understood, but since we are social creatures, even with autism, being understood is one of those things that's probably on the hierarchy of needs up there, So, I think I'm allowed to talk about this. She asked, what have people done to help you? Like what have therapists done? Your coping skills, this, that, and the other. And I had to kind of break down, like, no one's helped me. Like after my mom died, I was all but blamed for her death. I was a child. That type of thing. So she will help set me up with someone long-term who actually knows how to deal with people like me. So if you're looking for therapy, or you think you need it, but you are absolutely terrified for, any of the reasons I was terrified or other reasons, see if you can try some more. I think this is a numbers issue of finding people who will actually deal with you, unless you have the money to pay for, like, the specialists for autism, and they generally only want to work with kids or people who can't speak or who only script. I think that's called pre-verbal, is when you talk but you basically only script. It's going to be a task to go through all that therapy and talk about things, because I'm not someone who's really like, woo! Like, talk about my feelings, because then I cry. I end up crying, and I don't feel like I'm crying, though, because it's just tears come out, but I'm not like, however, the crying face is just, why am I leaking? It's like a sociopath. I had to tell her, I was like, one of the reasons I went into therapy when I was 20 is I was worried I was a sociopath. And she was like, you're not. But, it's pretty obvious to every therapist I've had that that's not what's happening. But I've been around quite many. I won't go into details about how, why, when, where, all that, but yeah, my whole life I've been around many. And when you're around that and you're not so good at reading social skills, you start learning to pick up on vibes, like energy instead. And that's not some woo-woo thing. You don't have to be religious and have antler bones and Jesus and all that, and Stars of David and stones to understand there's energies in rooms. You walk into a room and you're like, what's going on here? Or you walk into a room and it's like, okay, everyone's just doing their thing. Autistic people generally can pick up on a vibe even if they can't read a damn thing going on. And that would be me. So if you are still trying to look for a therapist, look, if I can get past the fact that guy pulled his dongle out on Zoom, if you need it, please try to get it. I'm trying. And I'm an asshole. If me, Dizzy, the asshole, who literally ended up driving herself crazy trying to help other people on YouTube. I said, message me if you have any mental problems, when I was 20 and 21, so I could help people. Left the sounds on, went and typed, didn't sleep. If I can put myself into this vulnerable position of doing therapy, you can also try. If it doesn't work, you don't have to go back, okay? But if it's someone who doesn't accept the autism diagnosis, you're just not going to get the therapy you need. That is my final thought. So I'm going to go continue the rest of my daily activities. I thought I would update y'all with my ugly, unmade up face. Give you a little jump scare for your day. These are just a little too long. Emo swoop. Bringing it back. Bringing it back. Oh shit, that looks good. Anyway, y'all have a great day. Go get help if you need it. Don't stay miserable if you don't have to. And you know, if you're gonna stay miserable, die trying not to be. Mwah!